keeping up with the future of money these days, I swear it's a full-time job.
Oh, tell me about it.
You sent over some really interesting stuff this week about this speech and some analysis around it, and I feel like we're at a point now where things could really start to shift. So
Yeah,
let's dive into what it could all actually mean for you listening, beyond the headlines.
absolutely. The information you've gathered offers, I think, a really compelling glimpse into potential future directions.
Okay.
It's a moment worth a closer look for sure.
Okay, let's unpack this. So today we're taking a closer look at Donald Trump's speech at the Digital Asset Summit 2025.
Right?
This took place on March 20th, 2025 in New York City. We've got a really interesting collection of sources here.
Yeah.
We've got key excerpts from the speech itself, a breakdown of the core announcements,
Hmm.
some expert analysis on its potential impact, and even a snapshot of the buzz that it generated on social media.
Right. So we're not just looking at the word spoken, but also the ripples that they're creating,
Yeah.
what the broader implications could be.
Exactly. And our mission for this deep dive is to extract the crucial information from all this, to really understand the significance of this speech, particularly as it relates to the crypto space, and, importantly for you, to explore any potential connections, whether direct or indirect, to a project you might be following closely, Pinetwork.
Yeah. It's a fascinating, multi-layered situation, and piecing it together could offer some truly valuable perspectives.
So let's start with the big picture. What was the overall feeling or message coming out of Trump's speech regarding cryptocurrencies?
Well, the central theme was undeniably focused on positioning the United States as a dominant player in the world of digital assets.
Right.
He specifically talked about making the U.S. a global leader, and even went so far as to declare the ambition to become a Bitcoin superpower.
Bitcoin superpower. That's a pretty strong statement.
Yeah.
This is the first time a sitting U.S. president has actually addressed a crypto industry conference directly.
Yeah.
That in itself feels like a really significant turning point, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It signals a level of acknowledgement and engagement from highest levels of government that we haven't really witnessed before. It
Yeah.
it really elevates the conversation around digital assets from a niche area to something of national importance.
So it wasn't just talk, right? There were some very specific initiatives that were either announced or strongly suggested. What were the key takeaways for you on that front?
Yeah, several key initiatives were highlighted. One of the most prominent, I think, was the proposal to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve.
Oh, wow.
The idea as presented is to leverage Bitcoin that has already been seized by the government, around 200,000 BTC, which at current market prices represents a considerable sum, roughly $17 billion.
And what was really noteworthy was the framing around this, that it would come at no cost to taxpayers. It was even likened to creating a digital Fort Knox, which paints a really good picture of Bitcoin as this secure national asset. We even saw a reference to this on the president's own social media, suggesting it's a core part of their strategy.
Yeah,
This isn't just about holding an asset. It could also signal a future where Bitcoin plays a role in national financial security or even international trade.
yeah.
It's fundamentally shifting its perceived status.
Precisely. It moves Bitcoin beyond just a speculative asset into the realm of strategic national holdings, which could have profound long-term implications for its stability and broader acceptance. Another crucial point was the discussion around stablecoin regulation. The call was for establishing clear and consistent rules for USD-backed stablecoins. The stated aim is to strike a balance, encouraging innovation within the stablecoin ecosystem while also ensuring adequate consumer protection. Stablecoins are essentially the lifeblood of much of the crypto trading and decentralized finance activity, acting as a stable bridge between traditional currencies and more volatile crypto assets. Clear rules here could unlock significant further growth and stability in the market.
That makes a lot of sense. Stablecoins play such a vital role in the current crypto landscape, facilitating transactions, providing liquidity. So bringing regulatory clarity there feels like a really foundational step. And there was also some reflection on past regulatory approaches, wasn't there? Criticisms of how things have been handled previously.
Yeah, specifically there was a mention of Operation Choke Point 2.0.
Right.
This was a past initiative where regulatory pressure was allegedly used to discourage traditional financial institutions from working with crypto businesses. The criticism suggests a desire to move away from such tactics and instead create a more explicitly crypto-friendly environment. The sentiment, as we saw echoed on social media, is about fostering innovation by removing unnecessary roadblocks.
So potentially a real shift in both the rhetoric and actual regulatory approach.
Yeah,
And the timeline being discussed for some of this legislative action sounds quite ambitious.
indeed. The the expectation being circulated is for digital asset legislation to reach the president's desk as early as August 2025. This suggests a significant push to formalize the regulatory framework in the near future. We saw mentions of this in connection with a digital asset summit speech across various platforms.
Okay. So a potentially significant shift in the U.S.'s stance on digital assets, with a clear emphasis on Bitcoin and stablecoins in the immediate term. Now, for the question that I know is of particular interest to you, what about Pi Network?
Yeah.
Was there any direct mention of it in this speech on March 20th?
The direct answer, based on all the source material you've provided, is no. Donald Trump's speech at the Digital Asset Summit on March 20th, 2025, did not include any direct mention of Pi Network.
So that's the clear conclusion when we look at the official speech analysis.
Yeah.
However, it's interesting to note that there was some online discussion and speculation leading up to the event, wasn't there? Certain claims being made on social media.
Yeah, there were claims circulating on X, most notably from a user like at Danaviet68,
Right.
suggesting that Trump had mentioned Pi Network on several occasions at a White House summit earlier in March, specifically on March 7th. However, it's crucial to emphasize that these claims lack any official verification or confirmation from the White House. The provided White House remarks source, which presumably would document any such mentions from an official summit, contains no record of Pi Network being discussed. And the reaction to those claims seems to have been largely skeptical, with other users actively questioning the validity and asking for concrete evidence.
And from what we saw, the general sentiment leaned towards these claims being unsubstantiated, with many in the crypto community remaining cautious without official confirmation. So it seems we can confidently say that there was no direct acknowledgement of Pi Network within this official context.
So that is the most prudent conclusion to draw based on the available evidence.
Yep.
The focus of the speech was unequivocally on Bitcoin, stablecoins, and the broader regulatory landscape for more established digital assets.
Okay. So no direct spotlight on Pi Network.
Yeah.
But let's think more broadly. Could there still be indirect ways that this more positive crypto stance, these potential new regulations, could eventually have an impact on Pi Network down the line?
Absolutely. Even in the absence of a direct mention, the broader shift in U.S. policy and overall sentiment towards cryptocurrencies could create a more favorable environment for projects like Pi Network in several important ways. One key aspect is the potential for increased legitimacy. When the U.S. government, at the highest level, publicly embraces Bitcoin and actively works towards clear regulations for digital assets, it inherently lends more credibility to the entire asset class.
Right.
This could encourage a wider audience to explore and engage with various cryptocurrencies, potentially, including Pi Network. If the overall perception of crypto shifts from something perceived as fringe or highly risky to something more mainstream and recognized by government, it could lower the barriers to entry for new users and potentially generate more and more interest in projects like Pi.
That's an interesting point, but given Pi Network's unique model and the fact that it's not yet listed on major exchanges, could this broader legitimacy still face hurdles in translating to direct user adoption or tangible benefits?
That's a critical question. While increased overall legitimacy is a positive tailwind, projects like Pi Network still need to navigate their own specific challenges, including their unique distribution model and eventual integration into the established crypto exchange ecosystem.
Right.
However, a rising tide can lift many boats, and a more accepting regulatory environment could make those integration processes smoother in the long run. Another potential indirect benefit lies in the realm of regulatory clarity. While the immediate focus seems to be on Bitcoin and stablecoins, the ongoing move towards establishing a more comprehensive and clearer framework for digital assets could eventually extend to other types of cryptocurrencies and decentralized projects. This could provide more certainty for Pi Network regarding its future development, the much anticipated mainnet launch, and its eventual integration into the broader crypto ecosystem.
Right. So if the rules of the road become clearer for the whole crypto space, it could indeed make it easier for Pi Network to navigate its own path forward once it's ready for its mainnet launch and widespread adoption.
Exactly.
And we also need to consider the potential for an overall positive shift in market sentiment. Government support for the crypto industry can often boost confidence among both investors and general users. This rising tide of optimism could benefit numerous projects, potentially increasing interest and adoption of decentralized initiatives like Pinetwork, even if the initial policy focus is on more established assets like Bitcoin.
Exactly. It creates a more welcoming and optimistic atmosphere for the entire digital asset space.
Okay, so there are definitely potential tailwinds for Pi Network, even without a direct acknowledgement from the president. However, we also need to maintain a realistic perspective, right? What are some important considerations or caveats to keep in mind, specifically for Pi Network, in light of all these broader developments?
Absolutely. It's crucial to reiterate that the speech contained no direct mention of Pi Network. Right.
While the broader environment might become more conducive to crypto innovation, Pi Network isn't necessarily at the forefront of immediate policy changes or benefits.
Right.
We also must remember Pi Network's current stage of development. It remains in its pre-mainnet phase with critical processes like the Know Your Customer KYC verification and the actual mainnet migration still in progress. These internal developments and their successful execution will likely have a more immediate and significant impact on Pi Network's trajectory than broad policy announcements from the government.
So while the larger environment might be evolving, Pi Network still has its own crucial milestones to achieve. And it's also worth underscoring that the specific initiatives highlighted in the speech really centered on Bitcoin and stablecoins. That's a key distinction. The initiatives announced, the strategic Bitcoin reserve, the focus on stablecoin regulation are very specifically targeted. This suggests that these larger, more established segments of the crypto market might experience more immediate attention and policy adjustments compared to newer, more decentralized projects like Pi Network. We even saw some of this sentiment reflected in the social media discussions with users pointing out the primary focus on Bitcoin.
Okay, so for you, the listener, what does all of this mean? It sounds like while there wasn't a specific announcement tailored to Pi Network, the wider landscape could be shifting in potentially favorable ways.
Yeah.
It's certainly something to keep a close eye on.
Precisely. The key takeaway is to understand that these are potential indirect benefits. The speech signifies a growing acceptance and prioritization of digital assets at a high level, which could foster a more fertile ground for innovation and adoption across the entire crypto space, potentially including decentralized projects like Pi Network over time. However, it's not a direct endorsement or a guarantee of immediate positive outcomes for Pi Network specifically.
So, to summarize our deep dive today, while Donald Trump's Digital Assets Summit speech didn't directly mention Pi Network, its focus on establishing the U.S. as a leader in crypto, creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve, pushing for stablecoin regulation, fostering a more crypto-friendly environment, and the anticipation of new digital asset legislation by August 2025 could indeed create a more welcoming and beneficial landscape for the wider cryptocurrency market. And this potentially more positive environment could, in turn, lead to indirect benefits for projects like Pi Network down the line. Through increased overall legitimacy for cryptocurrencies, the potential for clearer future regulations within the broader space, and a more positive overall market sentiment.
That's a comprehensive and accurate summary. It really captures the essential points of the speech and its potential, albeit indirect, relevance to the Pi Network community.
And on that note, here's a final thought for you to consider. What does the establishment of a national Bitcoin reserve really tell us about the long-term perspective on digital assets at the very highest levels of government? How might this broader acceptance, even without specific mentions of every single project out there, ultimately shape the future of decentralized currencies and the projects you're actively following? It's a truly fascinating space, and the implications of these large-scale moves are definitely something worth continuing to explore and think critically about.